Okay, since we're fucking America, and if America surrenders to fascism, then what? And these are the painful questions that are going to be lying ahead for all of us for the years to come. Now, each week brings us further confirmation that Donald Trump and his sycophants of his regime had staged a coup attempt. It appears abundantly clear that they will face few, if any, consequences at all. The Attorney General Merrick Garland and the Department of Justice give no impression that they're even preparing to prosecute Trump personally, or any of the other major organizers of the January 6th insurrection, and what little that they're doing is moving very slowly, basically. Without significant intervention, the world's so-called leading democracy will go quietly to sleep. A newspaper article called The Guardian offers new details about Trump's leadership role in the January coup attempt, which is more extensive and serious than previously known. According to Hugo Lowell's reporting, which he was drawing on multiple unnamed sources. Trump made several calls from the White House to his top lieutenants at the Willard Hotel in Washington on the afternoon of January 5th. And the morning of January 6th, all on the topic of ways to stop the certification of Joe Biden's rightful electoral win. Trump told his team at the Willard that Vice Squatter Mike Pence was reluctant to go along with the plan to commandeer his largely ceremonial role at the joint session of Congress and try to engineer a second term for Trump. And these conversations reveal a direct line from the White House and the command center at the Willard. And Lowell writes, and also it shows Trump's thoughts appear to be in line with the motivations of the pro-Trump mob that carried out the Capitol attack. Trump was furious, as we already fucking know, after Pence resisted his entreaties in the Oval Office meeting. But Trump wasn't done. He followed up with several more calls to his sycophants at the Willard, a group that included Rudy Kaludi, John Eastman, Boris Epstein, and Steve Bannon. And on those calls, the former squatter first recounted what had transpired in the Oval Office meeting with Pence. He informed Bannon and the lawyers of the Willard that his vice squatter appeared ready to abandon him at the joint session in several hours' time. He's arrogant, like Trump's fucking one to talk. For instance, basically Trump told Bannon of Pence his own way of communicating that Pence was unlikely to play ball in an exchange reported in Peril, which was a book that was written by Bob Woodward and Robert Costa and confirmed by The Guardian. Now, I got the book Peril, but I haven't read it yet. On at least one of these calls, Trump had also sought from the lawyers at the Willard ways to stop the joint session to ensure Biden would not be certified as president on January 6th as part of a wider discussion about buying time to get states to send Trump electors. The fallback that Trump and his lieutenants appeared to settle on was to cajole the Republican members of Congress to raise enough objections so that even without Pence adjoining the joint session, the certification process would be delayed for states to send Trump slates. Of course, this new reporting cannot be considered a revelation. It simply adds more evidence to an already huge pile, making clear that the Trump cabal was rigorously engaged in a conspiracy to nullify the results of the 2020 presidential election with the goal of making Trump a de facto dictator. Effectively, the coup was not defeated, and America's democracy crisis is worsening. Our failing democracy is close to being fatally undermined by a rigged electoral system basically designed to ensure that it would be almost impossible for Republicans to lose any election in the future. The public opinion polls and other research have shown that those Americans who are deeply concerned for democracy and they want to see Trump and his cabal punished for their obvious crimes are increasingly exhausted. Many have stopped believing that true justice will ever be done. By comparison, most Republican voters have internalized the big lie that the 2020 election was stolen, which it wasn't, and they are inclined to believe that Trump is still the legitimate squatter, which he isn't. A large percentage of Republicans also believe that their traditional way of life is under threat, and they are willing to endorse or condone violence to defend that. In the end, a plurality of Americans, if not a majority, through tacit consent or just plain indifference, are surrendering to the neo-fascist tide, and they're allowing themselves to be submerged in it. Trump sycophants and other conservatives are energized by their belief that the rising fascist tide will carry them back to their imagined greatness as the real Americans, which they aren't. But they will be drowned too, and that will just take longer. America's supposed pro-democracy leaders should be rallying the people to resist the Republican fascist assault, and most are not. In the most high-profile example, President Joe Biden is choosing to publicly embrace bipartisanship in the empty hope that the Democratic Party's legislative successes will somehow blunt the power of the Republican fascist movement. Meanwhile, the mainstream news media remains trapped in obsolescent norms of fairness, a balance, and objectivity, rather than engaging in the type of pro-democracy advocacy journalism demanded by the country's escalating political crisis. The right-wing media, or the Republican media and its larger echo chamber, is a propaganda and disinformation machine. Its foremost role is to convince the Republican and low information voters as a whole that empirical truth and reality no longer exist, and they are tools of a condescending elite and deep state. And many Americans are overwhelmed with the feeling of civic death, which is only compounded by the literal and unending plague of the coronavirus pandemic. These feelings of despair and doom are a further consequence of the age of Trump, in which what was heretofore unimaginable becomes almost normal. This normalization process involves both large and small acts of surrender as a means of maintaining relative sanity in a deranged society. A country cannot easily purge itself of such a state of malignant normality. And America is not the first country to experience such a crisis. Lessons of the past are supposed to help us better understand the present, as to avoid repeating those same mistakes, and that becomes more difficult in a country that's afflicted with organized forgetting. In his book, They Thought They Were Free, The Germans, 1933 to 1945, Milton Mayer reflects on his experiences living under the Nazi regime in Germany, and in one passage, he shares a friend's insight. To live in this process is absolutely not to be able to notice it, but please try to believe me. Unless one has much greater degree of political awareness, acuity, and then most of us have never had an occasion to ever develop, each step was so small, so inconsequential, so well explained, or even on occasion regretted, and that, unless one were detached from the whole process from the beginning, unless one understood what the whole thing was in principle, and what do all these little measures that no patriotic German could resent must one day lead to? One no more saw it developing from day to day than a farmer in his field sees the corn growing, and one day it is over its head. How is this to be avoided among ordinary men, even highly educated ordinary men? Frankly, I do not fucking know. I do not see, even now, many, many times since it happened, I have pondered that pair of great maxims, Principiis obsta infinitum respice. Resist the fucking beginnings and consider the fucking end. But one must foresee the end in order to resist or even see the fucking beginnings. But one must foresee the end clearly, and certainly, and how is this to be done? By ordinary men, or even by extraordinary men, things might have, and everyone counts on that might. The remarkable passage serves as both a testimony and warning. Many fucking Americans, especially fucking white people, lack a real understanding of the country's history. The price of admission into fucking whiteness is a type of myopia and intentional forgetting. Black and brown Americans, Native Americans, Muslims, and many recent immigrants and others who have suffered under power are not allowed such fantasies here. As such, many white Americans will soon be fucking forced, against their collective will, to relearn these historical lessons about fascism and authoritarianism, and how societies can be driven into madness for those Americans who do not understand the fucking depth of the country's democracy crisis, and then important choices await. And what does effective resistance look like? What can be salvaged from the country's democracy in the years ahead? Is it better to stay here and fight toward another day, or to fucking give up and fucking leave? In the most recent installment of her newsletter, historian Ruth Ben Gate explores that final question, and her insights merit extensive questioning. Hold on. The hand of the U.S. government and its enforcers will become heavier if the Republicans do well enough in 2022 midterms to take control of the House and Senate, and things could escalate this. Anyone in public education from kindergarten through advanced degree institutions is fair game in red states. South Carolina is considering a bill to abolish tenure at public colleges and universities. It would also be increasingly dangerous no matter where you live to be a transgender person. So one answer could be, start exploring your options now if you're in a threatened category of people, as are many of those who write to me. Better exile than prison, wrote former Italian Prime Minister Francesco Nitti to King Victor Emmanuel in 1925. He explained about why he left Italy when the fascists took power. Nitti worked from abroad to counter authoritarian propaganda about what was happening in his native country, as he was exiled from Hong Kong, Myanmar, and other places do today. It's unlikely that Republican rule would mean less imprisonment for political opponents, but the way there is in Erdogan's Turkey. Viktor Orban, darling of the GOP, has not gone that route, and it's a shame to lose capable people when they are most needed at home, which would be a situation in the U.S. today if Republicans gain more power and they retake the White House in 2024, which we hope they don't. Numbers matter for the success of nonviolent protests, for compensating at the ballot box for manipulated elections, and for constructing the kind of broad-based democracy a movement America desperately needs, in which everyone finds their own way of working to protect their freedoms and to regain those we might lose. Now, each person acts for their own reasons, and each situation is unique, but there is one constant in the history of exile. It means watching from afar after the travails of our country, and for those who desire to return, and like entering into a state of suspension, waiting for things to get better, waiting for the tyrant to die, and waiting for freedoms to be restored. If American democracy was as patient, it is self-medicating to numb the pain. But the fascist disease is almost fatal, and time for effective treatment is rapidly running out. And what should we fucking do? Individually, collectively, or both? When there is so much more to be done, and they're already fucking exhausted, or when fatalism seems more rational than fucking hope. The current crisis will put these questions into the American people's minds sooner rather than later, and tomorrow is no fucking guarantee, and we certainly cannot assume it'll be that'll be fucking better today than it was yesterday or the next day. So if you like the video, give the video a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, RBW King, and also hit the notification bell so that you've been notified when a new video comes out, and thanks for listening.